Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Liberty Weekly podcast. I'm your host, as always, Patrick McFarland. This one is episode 217. You may find the show notes at libertyweekly.net/217. And on the line, I have Clint Russell of Liberty Lockdown. How's it going, man?
I'm good, man.
Welcome,
Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the show. This is your first time on the show. Do you just want to introduce yourself and tell the audience what you're all about?
Sure. I am Clint Russell. I am the host of Liberty Lockdown and former mortgage broker that became a retired Liberty psychopath when the lockdowns happened. And that's basically what I'm known for, is just railing against the lockdowns, and now railing against the potential for World War III, and now railing against the potential for economic collapse. You know, we got a lot of problems. So I was a one-trick pony that was just against lockdowns, and now that we seem to be winning that battle, I'm moving on to the next ones.
Yeah. Well, and thank God for that. I mean, it just seems like, at least, you know, I don't know if there's ever going to be like a kind of a point of reckoning where most people kind of realize that, hey, we went a little crazy there for 2 years.
God, I hope so, man.
Yeah.
I hope that point of reckoning comes with trials personally. But,
yeah,
you know, I kind of doubt it, too. I think that it's very improbable that the people that, you know, violated every right that every human being on earth has will ever pay the price that they ought to in this lifetime, at least. But I'm not going to stop talking about it. I'm not going to stop talking about the tribunals that they ought to be holding to deal with Fauci, et cetera. Like, these people are absolutely evil as far as I'm concerned, and we're paying the price for their misdeeds.
Yeah, and like, I was thinking about this, especially when you're kind of in a small town. You know how even in small towns, things lined up on both sides, and usually you had like the school district people being on the wrong side of the issue. And at this point in time, it's like you're trying to interact with them and everything has kind of gone away, but there's still kind of this elephant in the room because you're just kind of like, well, I know what you did and I haven't forgotten that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, man. Like, I have relatives that were, you know, hardcore lockdown proponents, and I just don't know how I'll ever look at them the same way.
Yeah.
You know, they probably feel the same way about me, and that's fine. But, you know, I was talking to you pre-show, you know, I was at Universal Studios in Orlando yesterday, and there's like 10% of the people that are still wearing masks, and they're walking outside by themselves in the sun, masked up. And you're just like, well, these people are never going to be reached. I mean, they're just gone like forever. And I feel that's kind of what it is. You know, we just there's like probably, I think 75% of people will come back to some semblance of a liberty oriented reality. But I think 25% of people are like, you know, totalitarian until they die now. And it's like, we're going to have to deal with those people forevermore. And that I am not even considering, you know, the children that have now been raised into this stuff and think that it's normal. I mean, those are the kids that I'm most concerned about.
Yeah. And yeah, those effects we won't even see for a while, you know. I wonder how it's going to rear its ugly head, like in terms of having a whole generation that's just stunted in some way. It's really concerning.
Tremendously so. I mean, I was reading The Real Anthony Fauci by RFK Jr., or maybe it's RFK, I think it is.
Yeah.
And he was going through some statistics, and it was like 50% increase in suicidal ideation and something similar percentages in terms of like drug overdoses and use of psychotropic medications for kids that are dealing with anxiety and depression and things like that. It's just catastrophic, and it's tragic, and it was totally unnecessary, totally uncalled for, totally unscientific. I mean, everything that we went through for the past 2 years, and we were told every step of the way that we were wrong, that we were the science deniers, that we were the conspiracy theorists, and they were the conspiracy theorists, and they were the science deniers, and they were wrong. You know, like that's really what it is. And we now know that, you know, factually. But I think just from a principled standpoint, we knew that far, far long ago. You know, it's like I knew in the first 30 days of lockdown that like this was going to be catastrophic. And, you know, I didn't realize that they would be so inefficacious when it came to preventing spread and transmission and fatalities and things like that. Like I didn't know that they would be so worthless, but I did know that the economic consequences would be tremendous. I knew that the psychological consequences would be tremendous. So now we got basically no additional lives saved plus a whole bunch of additional lives lost. And that doesn't even include the financial lives that are going to be lost in the future because we're on the cusp of potentially seeing the entire collapse of fiat currency globally, or at least in certain countries. You got Myanmar that's going nuts right now because the people can't eat, they can't get their medication. They're living on one meal a day. Some of them aren't eating at all, and they are burning down politicians' houses and robbing rich people as they walk past them in the street. And this is all stuff that I predicted in May of 2020. I was like, this is what we're going to see, and I don't think it's going to stop there. I think we're going to see it in many countries. I tend to believe that we'll avoid it in the U.S. just because we have such abundance, but it's not impossible. Like, we could see it here too eventually.
Yeah. And I feel kind of bad in a way because I started my show in 2017 and I did it for a few years. And then I got, I'm an attorney and I had a job at a firm. And so I had, our first kid and I had to focus on, my career. And so I kind of took a hiatus. And in the middle of that, I think I ended the show, really. I didn't end the website or anything. But in the middle of that, COVID happened. And it was a few months after that I kind of came back, but I missed the real brunt of everything. And, with work and everything, things went crazy at that time. I mean, you lived through it. And especially as a professional trying to figure out how to run a law practice behind, remotely all of a sudden and coordinate with your paralegals at the same time is just, the synergy is gone,
Yeah. Well, I was a mortgage broker and I didn't have, I was an entrepreneur. I ran my own shop. I worked from home, fortunately. So like technically I wasn't shut down by the lockdowns because I could still work from home. But in reality, I was essentially shut down because I could no longer evaluate risk. I had no idea what was going to happen with all these millions of people being put out of work all of a sudden overnight. At the time, we had no idea what the bailouts were going to look like. We didn't know, about the foreclosure and eviction moratorium, the 7 trillion, some people say north of 10 trillion that was funneled into the system via all sorts of mechanisms. I mean, who knew? Who knew what they were capable of or stupid enough to do in response to this? I mean, who also knew how long the lockdowns were going to last? I mean, we were told 2 weeks, then we were told a month, then 2 months, then the end of summer, then it just kept, like, the goalposts just kept moving. And as a money manager, someone who was a fiduciary to my investors, I had to be very conscientious of looking after their assets over my own personal needs or desires. And I had to cut off my own legs. I had to basically shut down my business and cut off the legs of all of my retirees that were relying on me for that passive income. It's just absolutely tragic. But in hindsight, I guess I could have kept going. But the nature of my business was that we would have loan durations of 2 to 3 years. So had I kept doing those loans, all the way up until now, then we would have 2 to 3 years of loan duration before they matured and they were paid off, heading into this, what I think is going to be a very severe recession. So it looks like my timing couldn't have been better. Like, I actually shut it down. The government bailed us out for a couple of years to basically allow those notes to roll off and to be paid off. So my investors got their capital back. And now, God willing, they are managing it cautiously and they're not all head over heels in the stock market. I don't know. I'm not following up with them, but you're absolutely right. I mean, what they did to the business world was just insane.
Yeah. And for us, the big thing was that the suspension of jury trials, right? It was kind of an indefinite suspension. And at the time I was practicing personal injury on like the plaintiff's side. So like the injured people representing them. And when you're in that situation, the threat of a jury trial is the sledgehammer that you have to negotiate a good settlement. Right. And when all of that is paused, personal injury firms, they actually run on it. They don't take retainers from their client up front. They actually run on contingency. And so you're only paid if you recover like a settlement or a verdict on your client's behalf. And usually it's against an insurance company. But yeah, so all that just kind of sits there and things just kind of sat for a while and there weren't a lot of settlements coming in. But even a huge firm operates on kind of a slim margin in the sense that they need cash rolling in and settlements rolling in the whole time, or else they'll go belly up no matter how big they are. And so it's a really kind of a risky kind of deal. And the train just it just has to flow. So,
similar.
yeah.
I mean, that's the nature of the mortgage business too. It's like fortunately in my business, the margins were fairly high and I didn't have to do that much volume, but the bigger brokerages, you're already seeing it. You're already seeing tens of thousands of, loan underwriters and things of that nature being laid off because the interest rates are going up. And when they go up, people stop refinancing because you can't refinance into a lower mortgage. So like, why would you refinance, right?
Right. Yeah.
So all these people are back in the unemployment line, in a matter of months or weeks because of the Fed increasing the rates. And I mean, the truth is the rates should have never been that low to begin with. They shouldn't have been held that low for that long. It's completely insane. It's completely detached from any semblance of economic reality. It makes it impossible to evaluate risk. And we're going to pay the price for it. We now have a bubble across basically every asset class, and we've just seen a very minor reckoning versus what could potentially be coming. I mean, we've lost north of I think it's $6 or $7 or $8 trillion worth of paper value in the stock market in the past couple of weeks. It's enormous. I mean, it's like based off of the charts I saw, it's bigger than the Great Recession, the '09 collapse already. But the market was so ultra elevated that it doesn't feel that bad yet. But if people are old enough to remember, in 2007, going into '08, there was a big dump, but you didn't feel the ramifications fully until '09 and '10. That's when the market really bottoms out. So I feel like that's probably where we're at right now. I mean, time will tell, but it certainly feels as if 12 to 18 months from now we'll be looking back on this period as the good old days and wishing they could come back real soon.
Yeah, it's hard to I say in a lot of my interviews that I try to be a happy warrior like Ron Paul, but it's just difficult with all the doom scrolling and all the bad news coming out. I remember when COVID kind of started and I was talking to my paralegal at the time, and he was more of kind of a liberal guy. And I was like, I mean, what they're doing now, essentially, inflation is going to hit us really, really bad. And I said, a gallon of milk is going to be $7 or $8. Now we're not there yet. And, things inflate, I think, at different rates there's a lot of other variables, but I think we're really kind of starting to see that.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, everyone always talks about Ron Paul, well, he was a happy warrior and all this stuff. But the truth is, Ron Paul was probably the loudest person,
You're right.
at least in Congress, that was screaming about the housing bubble back in '05. So, there's nothing, incongruent with being really optimistic about the nature of humanity and the nature of liberty and the green sprouts that are all around us, whether it be the decentralized technologies, cryptocurrencies, the internet, the fact that you and I are able to have this conversation, it's incredible. We have tremendous opportunity. The fact that in 2 years I went from an entrepreneur mortgage broker to a professional podcaster, it's unbelievable. So don't let my dire outlook on the economy trick you into thinking that I'm not optimistic overall. I mean, I've always been the type of person that believes you have to eat your vegetables, and the United States people, the American people, have not eaten their vegetables in a very long time. So we're going to be forced to do so, but that's not the worst thing in the world. You have a recession. Hopefully we don't bail out the scumbags that got us here, and we can get to some semblance of sound money and build back better, truly, not the World Economic Forum version of it.
Yeah. And I always, cause I've always, even when I kind of started the show, I listened to Peter Schiff a lot. And there was a period of time where I would listen to every single thing that he put out and all of his interviews and stuff. And I don't do that anymore, but he always had this analogy of being on a binge. You're binging alcohol, you've been drunk for so long, and you really need to have a hangover, and you really need to do that and sleep it off. Yeah.
And hangovers don't feel good, but it's your body getting right. It's getting rid of the poison, and we are just, we're the problem. My concern is that we've been an alcoholic my entire life. And when you're an alcoholic that long, you get the DTs and you die.
Yeah.
If you withdraw too quickly. So we have a potential for, an economy death almost. And I don't think that, I was on part of the problem with Dave and Guy Swan and Robbie the Fire just 2 days ago, and everybody on that panel is like way more optimistic than me. They're like, if they were to just do the right thing and let this all fall apart, it could be 2 years, we could be back to a really strong and healthy economy. And I'm like, I don't agree. I'm sorry, I don't. I really think that we're looking at a decade of pain if we were to actually try and get away from all of the debt that the entire world is awash in. I mean, it's like 300 trillion plus in global debt. If we were to actually get away from that stuff, it's the right thing to do. It's what's necessary, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to suck tremendously. I mean, it's going to be absolutely excruciating. And we have, dual paths, dual problems or pains that are hitting us simultaneously. We have, inflation as well as a shitty economy, which is essentially stagflation. And I think that there's a chance that we get hyperinflation. There's also a chance that we have a cascading debt default where we end up in a really severe deflationary spiral. And most libertarians only see the inflationary path as a potential, but I think that both are equally probable, honestly.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I've never talked about like you said you called it a defaulting spiral.
A deflationary spiral, yeah.
Oh, okay. And that's because of, all these debt obligations would be defaulted on. Okay. Can you explain that a bit more? Because I need to brush up on my economics.
Yeah, basically, I mean, deflation just means that like your dollar becomes more powerful. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is not like they're gonna extract all of the liquid currency that's floating around out there. Like I don't know that they'll do that in a significant fashion that would actually, by the Austrian definition, solve the inflationary crisis. And that means what I mean by it is that when you have so much debt that's in a system, like our economy is almost entirely predicated on debt. It's not predicated on like production and growth. It's like low interest rates. How much can I borrow? I'll borrow $250,000 to go to college, for God's sakes. It's insane. And then you have housing, which is, usually 80 to 90% of the acquisition price you're borrowing. Like this is not an economy based off of any semblance of like sane economic principles. It's just debt. So the reason I'm so concerned about a deflationary spiral is that you have all of these loans that can either mature or basically the asset becomes worth less than what you owe on it. So you just walk away from it and you default in that fashion. It's essentially what we saw in 2009. You saw, Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers and all these big boys. We have all of these, collateralized debt obligations. We have all of these, forgetting the term, but derivatives contracts where there's just all this gambling where they leverage up the system. They just continue to leverage it up. And we don't even know really how much leverage there is in the system. All we know is that back in 2008, when real estate went bust, they said that based off the derivatives contracts alone, like if they didn't bail them out, we were going to have a complete, catastrophic economic banking breakdown. Everything was going to break down. And I'm not sure that they were lying. Like I think that might actually be true. I still don't agree with what they did. I don't think that they should have bailed them out, but it's only gotten worse from there. Like people will point to, God, I'm blanking over and over again. The bill that was passed, Dodd-Frank. They'll point to Dodd-Frank and they'll say, well, there's all these reforms that have been put in place. Come on. Like we all know that that they didn't fix much. Like right, it's just window dressing, and ultimately you ended up in a bigger bubble today than you were in 12 years ago. And I don't think that's an accident. I don't think like the regulators were on top of the ball or even capable or intelligent enough to know what they should be preventing from occurring to prevent what we're in right now. So a lot of people think that inflation is the path. I am not sure. I think that if you start to see big businesses go bankrupt, which you very easily could, then you'll start to see consumers go bankrupt and walk away from housing, walk away from whatever, and defaulting there, giving their cars away, giving their houses away. And if you see that, it's just like it just builds on itself. So that's another negative potential, near-term future for us.
So is it that participants in the economy, they will hold on to their dollars? Is that what causes the deflation?
No, it's well, yes. I mean, that's certainly part of it in the sense that people get really nervous. Like if you remember in 2009, housing was really cheap. No one was buying it though.
I see.
I remember I went out and I bought, this like mansion for 400 grand, and the thing like 3 years later was worth 700. And it's just like there's values that are really abundant when you're in a really severe recession and a bear market, but people are scared to death, so they hold on to their money. Also, unemployment is usually very high during those periods, so people don't have money to spend. So they, whatever money they do have, they just use it for the bare necessities. So that you're not going to see people out there making big acquisitions, cars, houses, things like that. So if you're the type of person that has liquidity in that environment, you can make a killing, and that's what I did. I went from a starving college student in 2008 to a millionaire, less than a decade later, just because I went out and I bought as aggressively as I could with, what limited capital I had and I had really good credit. So that helped. But that's how I kind of built my little mini empire, was just by buying as much as I could when the market was beat up. And now I'm advising people to be very cautious about their holdings and, consider getting some liquidity, because if we end up in that reality again, you're going to want to have some cash so that you can go buy on the cheap.
Hey everybody, Patrick McFarland here. I'm really excited to tell you guys about the newest sponsor of the Liberty Weekly podcast, and that is Crowd Health. When I launched my law practice a few months ago, I found myself without health insurance. I searched through the individual healthcare plans on healthcare.gov and was appalled at the high cost and poor coverage. So I decided to try out Crowd Health. That's right, I use Crowd Health myself. Now there's a reason why healthcare costs are so high. That is because healthcare is no longer something that takes place between you and your doctor. Everyone listening to this podcast should already know that big insurance and big pharma unite with big government to squeeze every penny that they can from you. This, of course, drives costs up. For instance, Obamacare caps the percentage of profit that health insurance companies can make off of premiums. How then do they make more money? Well, they charge a higher premium. So there's no incentive for insurance companies to negotiate for lower prices on your behalf. Enter Crowd Health. You pay one low monthly total, usually less than $200, to fund a healthcare account that is yours. Then you choose whatever doctor that you want. And if you have a big bill, Crowd Health will crowdfund that bill for you so you can pay the doctor or hospital quickly. Now, to help you along the way, Crowd Health will assign you and your family a personal care representative. My care representative is named Maggie, and if I have any questions, Maggie is just a text or a phone call away. When I enrolled, Maggie called me to get to know me. We spent a great deal of time discussing my needs and goals with my own healthcare. Maggie's great. Stop supporting the broken health insurance system with your hard-earned dollars. Go to joincrowdhealth.com now and experience freedom from health insurance like I do. Right now, you can get your first 3 months for just $99 per month. That's almost 50% off the normal price, and it's a heck of a lot less than a high-deductible healthcare plan. So just go to joincrowdhealth.com and use promo code LW99 at sign-up to tell them that I sent you. That's joincrowdhealth.com, promo code the letter L, the letter W, and the number 99. Now, disclaimer, Crowd Health is not health insurance, and that's a good thing. It's a totally different way of paying for healthcare. Terms and conditions may apply. Well, what was it at that time that really kind of tipped you off to go buy? Is it just your education? You saw an opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, I was a mortgage broker, so I had been following the real estate market for, my entire life. My dad was also a real estate or a mortgage broker himself, so I got to witness it from a very young age. Plus, I've always just had a good eye for business. I also went to college for business, so everything just kind of added to it. But when you're, I was 26 years old or so, and I'm looking at the real estate market, and a year prior, a starter home was 750 grand, and now I could get a starter home for 300 grand. Well, it doesn't take a genius to go well, maybe I want to do that. That seems like a pretty good deal. And interest rates were higher, and it was harder to qualify for loans at that time. But if you could do it, it was, in my opinion, it was a no-brainer. Obviously, because everyone had just gotten destroyed in the real estate market, they were all scared to death. A ton of people had bankruptcies on their record, so they couldn't qualify for a home loan at that point. So in that environment, being a first time buyer myself, I just had a tremendous advantage. I was just I was able to buy when either people were too afraid or incapable of doing so.
It was crazy because our first house, I graduated law school in 2018. And then right after that, we bought our first house it was in 2018, in August 2018. And we sold it in 2 years later, a little over 2 years later, for twice the value.
Wow.
So it was a crazy turn. And now it was lakefront property that we scooped up, at a pretty good price, like a FSBO kind of situation. So, but yeah, I was really, really lucky the way that it worked out.
Well, and you owner occupied it, right? So the gains were tax free.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's the biggest thing that people don't understand. Like, I don't know why, libertarians, especially since we're so averse to taxation, the fact that they don't know, like, it should be very well known that if you own or occupy a primary residence and you own it for 2 years, you can get up to $250,000 tax free. And if you're married, up to $500,000 tax free on the gain. That's life changing money, brother. Like, that is huge. And that's what I did. I bought this huge house in Escondido. I cashed out with like $200,000 gain tax free because I lived there for 3 or 4 years. And then I pivoted. I bought a triplex that I didn't live in, but I made like 200 grand on that. Then I bought a house in Carlsbad, California that was on the lagoon there, just overlooking the ocean, just unbelievable property. And it appreciated by $500,000 over the 6 years I owned it. So, and I sold it, probably too soon because I didn't realize that the the recession was going to be papered over after the lockdowns. But anyways, almost all of those gains I didn't have to pay taxes on. I mean, that is how you fast track a real, accumulation of wealth at a very young age. And I hope that people are preparing themselves today so that if we see a repeat of 08, 09, you guys can be the ones that are out there buying up all these, depressed assets at the time. And I think housing would be a really good thing to look at if I'm right, and if we end up in a deflationary spiral as opposed to a hyperinflationary one.
Is that like is it called the 1031 exchange? I don't know if it's the same from state to state. Like
it is. Yeah. It's the same. Yeah, but it's not. That's not what I'm talking about, though. 1031 is an investment property where you can take the gains, not pay taxes, and roll them into a like kind, which just means same type of property, and not pay taxes. But I'm saying if you live in it as an owner occupied, you don't have to 1031 it at all. You just take the gains and don't pay taxes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. So, I've seen, because I worked for a title company for a little bit, and so we were doing some 1031s, and so that like my limited experience with it. But I guess I didn't understand that you were living in it in each of those properties. But at the same time you were doing that, did you have other investment properties?
Not well. I mean, the triplex was the other big buy I made, right? And I didn't live in that, so I bought it for nothing. Because it was like in the hood of Southern California, like in Paris, California. It was a really rough area. But it was a nice ass triplex, man. It's probably worth like $500,000 today. I bought it for $175, sold it for $350. And it was just opportunities. Like there was just opportunities all over the place back then. And I bought that in like 2011 or 12. And then I bought my house in Carlsbad in 2014, and the market was still, I mean, it had already recovered substantially, but for whatever reason, like the high end market hadn't come back yet. So I was able to buy that. She had it range listed between 900 and 1.2 million. And I came in, I'm a real estate broker. So I walk in and I was like, and I was with my girlfriend at the time, and she just loved us because her husband had passed away. And she's like, we just put on the market. We haven't had any offers yet. And I was like, well, if I were to offer low end of the range, and I could close fast, like, would you be open to that? And she's like, well, we don't have any offers yet. And I was like, boom, I went home, wrote that motherfucking contract up right away. And I was like, I sprinted over there, offered her 900. And, 5 years later, I sold it for 1.5. So it's crazy, man. You just have, I mean, I spent a ton of money fixing it up too. So it's not like it was all profit, but, I also got to live in, the most beautiful place on earth, which is Carlsbad, California. Play beach volleyball all the time and work from home, running my mortgage company. It was a dream. So those opportunities are really abundant in recessions. So like, I don't want people to look at a recession like it's it's all bad. Like just because you might lose your job or something, yeah, that sucks. But there's way better opportunities to acquire assets that amount to life changing wealth during those periods. I really don't bring it up to brag as much as I just want to give people hope. Like if we see a recession, there are opportunities that will be presenting themselves to you. So just try and be ready.
Yeah, for sure. Like for certain. I think you're right. As libertarians, it seems like, yeah, we do need to pursue that kind of wealth and success and be aggressive and see these things as opportunities instead of just, I was going to a therapist, and the therapist at the time, to deal with stress from this job and COVID and everything. And he's telling me, like, when you're in a fight or flight position, this is evolutionary psychology. When you are walking through the forest and you see a bear, like, you choose to run, right? And when you're running, you're in fight or flight. So you're looking around and you don't notice how pretty the flowers are, or, what a beautiful afternoon it is. You're trying to get the fuck away from the bear, right? And so it's like that, as libertarians, I guess we see all these things happening in the world and feel like we have the answer, and it's frustrating, but we're also, so pessimistic about everything. We can't stop and see those opportunities.
I think that's so true, man. Like the biggest gripe I have with libertarians is like they understand the system and yet they don't know how to play it. Like you have to pair your knowledge of how much bullshit this entire economic model is with some level of like entrepreneurialism, some sort of opportunism. Like look at these opportunities, and if you know that this system can't last, well, then you should be preparing for when it stops persisting, and then you can, be the guy that picks up the bag. There's nothing wrong with that, and the market needs it too. Like the market needs buyers. When I bought that house for $400,000 when it was probably worth 700 back in the day, like that seller needed it. I bought it from a bank. Like I bought it it was a foreclosed property. And that gives liquidity to the system. So like, there's nothing immoral about it. It's just like you delayed gratification. You saved up your down payment. You had your credit in order. You had your employment in order so that you could take opportunities when they presented themselves, and other people didn't. The people that are buying in this market, God bless them. I don't wish them harm, but like they don't know what we know. Like they don't understand it like we do. So we should be able to capitalize on that. And it drives me crazy that more libertarians don't do it. I have so many libertarians that come to me, should I buy now? And I was like, no, like, no, man. I mean, could this bubble last longer? Could we end up in a Weimar Germany hyperinflationary period? Like, okay, yeah. But if that's the case, I would rather see you buy gold. Like, honestly, like I just, if you really think that hyperinflation is the play, get some Bitcoin, get some gold. I don't understand why you would go into housing, which is so based off of debt. Like that, if we end up in a deflationary bust, the last thing you want to do is be holding, well, stocks obviously are the worst, but then housing would be second. So I just don't get it. I don't get why the libertarians that I know and love don't do what I do. It's weird to me. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, in a way that was me, like during the pandemic. I bought my first AR-15 during the pandemic, but it's even appreciated a couple $100 now, so maybe that's not a bad idea. But on the other hand, like I was looking at a used vehicle the other day, and I just wanted to buy something in cash. But now is the worst time to buy, or at least a few months ago it was, to buy a used vehicle.
Oh, dude, it's terrible.
It's real bad.
I got a brand new Corvette a year ago, but I was very fortunate because I had been on a wait list for it because it was the rear engine one that was brand new in 2020, and I had been on a wait list for it. And by 2022, they finally called me up and they're like, "Hey, you're next up for your order." So I had ridden out the entire pandemic, and they still gave it to me at I think what was MSRP, and I could probably flip it for like 30 or 40,000 more than I bought it for, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But the thing's such a like masterpiece. I don't think I'll ever sell it.
Yeah. Well, in just kind of changing gears a little bit, it's like, so a lot of people sense that something is coming. I mean, we've been talking about it, but something like world order altering. You know what I mean? And we see all these crazy things happening in the news, and it feels like it's unprecedented. And I guess at least in my thought, you try to make sense of an infinitely complex world, and skeptics would say that's where conspiracy theories come from. But it really does seem like if maybe they are tanking this system on purpose to usher in something else. And I mean, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a distinct possibility. I mean, there are aspects, there are organizations that talk about it openly. So like it's, whether or not they're in control, I don't know. But there are the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, a bunch of these people talk about it very brazenly, that like we are planning a great reset, and that will consist of a bunch of things that are Marxist in nature and not capitalist in nature, and very un-American. I mean, I think that's the best way to describe it. Like the antithesis of the American ideal is kind of what they want. They want diminishing property rights or a lack thereof entirely. They want a handful of technocrats that are in power while the poors are told what to do, and they listen dutifully. They have chips in their arms, and they get all their money basically printed and handed to them. It's insane what some of these people talk about. So I don't think it makes you a conspiracy theorist just to go like, hey, there's some crazy people saying some really crazy shit, and we might want to like stop them.
Yeah, right. No.
So that's kind of my perspective on it. Like whether or not they are actually implementing this, it's kind of irrelevant because it's happening. Like that. I don't think you could have had lockdowns if you didn't have people that viewed the world this way, where it was like the us versus the peons. It's just so obvious that they view us as cattle. The fact that they thought they could mask us all up and force something in our body and threaten our jobs, and that we would all just accept it. Like that's crazy to me. It's just absolutely unbelievable. I think the silver lining is that we learned not just the extent to which they will go, but the hubris with which they are operating. And I think that'll be their downfall.
We were talking earlier about this. Oops, my printer just shut off. We were talking earlier about, some of these things that are in play too, and around COVID-19. And one thing I really keyed on that, James Corbett, I don't know if you know James, what he was talking about is this global pandemic treaty that's being put forward by the WHO. And that just seems, in my research on it, it seems like the United States doesn't want something that is obligatory. If we're going to pass a new pandemic treaty, they don't want something that's obligatory, that means that they have to take certain steps if a global health emergency is declared. But I mean, you just got to think that they're going to acquiesce at the last moment, and it seems so helpless. Much like with the Ukraine situation, it seems like all we can do is just watch while these representatives go in and give billions of dollars to Ukraine. At the same time, there's this supranational organization like the WHO that's just going through it and ramming these things in. And I don't know, like, what we can do about it aside from what we're doing,
Yeah, no, I think that's the fucking $1 trillion question.
Right.
Like what can we do? Well, I've dedicated myself, same as you, to trying to inform as many people as possible as to what's transpiring. I think that's square one, because so few people are aware of it. I mean, I've kind of, as of late, become a bit of a specialist in explaining, well, not critical race theory, but ESG more broadly, which is kind of critical race theory for corporate America, and BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, that whole mechanism that they're using to implement wokeness and increase their money under management and decrease basically the average person's opportunities. It's sick and it's evil, but it's real and it's happening, and they're open about it and they talk about it, and it's like, so I think that, square one is you have to empower the people with the knowledge to know what's happening. And then after that, you guys can kind of work together to fight it. I mean, I certainly think that divesting, or at least taking your money out of passive money managers and trying to undercut the BlackRocks of the world that are implementing this stuff. Like that's square one. But if people don't understand it, they won't even do that. And ultimately, like because they have access to the Fed window, even if we were to withdraw all, most of our money, like they still will be a problem. There's still going to be an issue for us. So I think that that particular issue is it's so complex. It requires some grasp of economics, which the vast majority of people don't have any. So this is why I've made it my mission to make this like this is the fucking flag that we hold as libertarians. Like we understand this. We know what's going on and nobody else does. And it's the same way I told Dave on Part of the Problem. Like I feel the same way I did about lockdowns in May of 2020 is how I feel about ESG today. Like we have an opportunity presented to us. Don't let it slip through our hands. Like we can wake the people up and we can actually point them towards the actual enemy. Because if we don't do it, they're going to be told that it's capitalism that did it to them.
Right.
And then they're going to demand that the government be significantly larger, and capitalism will basically be ended at that point. So I just think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that at minimum every libertarian understands this inside and out, and then hopefully we can work our way down to the normies. No disrespect to the normies out there.
Yeah. I don't know how many there are listening to my show, but well, actually there are some. Sometimes I get mortified when people that I know in real life listen to my show, and I'm just like, oh God, like, yeah, there's so much baggage that comes with, like, there's so much presupposed positions that comes with what I talk about and who I have on and things like that. So it's you tend to forget how radical that our beliefs are when you swim in the circles that you and I do.
Oh yeah.
So it's funny.
Yeah, I'll talk about secession like at brunch. You know? Like I don't give a shit. And my aunt will look over at me like, what the fuck is wrong with this kid? So yeah, you're totally right. But honestly, like, I don't think that our beliefs are actually all that radical. Like if you are able to package them in a way that can play off some of their like nationalistic heartstrings, the hagiography that they've learned about the American experiment, things like that, like especially on the right, like it's a pretty easy sell in my experience to say like, hey, do you want someone like Anthony Fauci telling you what whether your business can be open, what you have to put in your body to go to work? Like, do you want him to tell you what your kids have to wear 12 hours a day at school? Like, no. Like the answer is no across the board. So from there, I just kind of build off that and I go, do you want them dictating, what the price of money is? Like, do you want them dictating how much paper currency is in the system? Like the answer is no. Right. Like they don't want it. I think that there's just a lack of empowerment. There's like the people believe that this is all inevitable and they're helpless. And it's like, we have the power. We just don't have the numbers because people think that they don't have the power. So I'm working on that. I'm trying to get people to feel as if like we outnumber these people 1,000-to-1. Like in my opinion, we really do.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about like the left, like the Democratic voter. I'm saying the power brokers of the world.
Right.
Like we absolutely outnumber them 1,000-to-1. So if we ever actually decide it's over, it'll be over.
Yeah. Hey guys, welcome to the portion of the show where I tell you how you can help support this content. And what I've been doing is putting so much work lately into Substack, which is the premier way now to support the Liberty Weekly podcast. So go on over to libertyweekly.net/Substack. The reason I chose it was to feature my writing, and you can see that I have bonus episodes in here. I have early access to new episodes. I have early access to my feature articles that will be run at the Libertarian Institute. I'm putting blog posts in there. I'm putting, I like to write poetry, so I put poetry in there too. So you can see that these are all the posts that I've featured since I started working on my Substack, and that has been the premier way to help support the Liberty Weekly podcast. Guys, this is a value for value show, so if you appreciate the work that I do, the hard work that I put into this show, and you get value out of it, and if you're in a position to do so, please consider giving value back, and Substack is a great way to do that. I'm still doing Patreon, however. And you can check out all the other ways to help support this work over at libertyweekly.net/support. Patreon is one of them. And have been linking all of my posts that I do over at Substack on Patreon as well. But Substack really is the premier way. And thank you guys. Like, I have been getting much more attention in the last few weeks now that I switched to Substack than I have in the years that I've been doing this content. So join the community, get access to this great content. I'm working on really putting out stuff like once every other day. And so I think that this is a great way to get access to my work. So head on over to libertyweekly.net/Substack. Thanks, guys. And I've been trying to, like, in my own work, I'm of the right, you know, and I live in a small town. I get the right, conservative positions. I've been trying hard to listen to some shows of people that are across the aisle, because I feel like in this situation, we've become so reactionary because of the existential threat of COVID that we've just become reactionary, and I'm afraid of the swing to the right. In a sense, I get it, you know, and in a lot of ways, I understand it and empathize with it. But at the same time, too, it just seems like there's so many, I hate to call them distractions, but they really are. And it seems like, you know, if you're saying that we outnumber them 1,000,000 to 1, well, we're going to need some of those other people on the other side to come with us. And if we're just, you know, I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say with it, but
yeah, we can't be alienating people just based off of their political leanings. I agree with you. Like, this is why I've been trying to really hammer home the fact that ESG is actually the reason, even though they don't know it, it's in large part the reason that the left thinks that capitalism is evil. It's actually to their benefit right now because they're pushing wokeism, which the left likes, but they could just as easily be pushing like Christian conservatism through corporate America, and the left would be screaming bloody murder if that were happening. So I'm trying to explain to them, like, if whatever you're feeling is about big business, the last thing you want, no matter who you are, unless you're a big business owner, is to enable a system that allows big business to be in bed with big government. It's the worst of both worlds. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're at right now. So, like, I reach across the aisle to the left all the time saying, look, you guys were right. Like, we allowed these big businesses to do things to us that were really, really catastrophic to us culturally. And I was asleep to it. You know, I wasn't paying attention to it because I didn't understand ESG. I didn't understand why it was happening. I also didn't pay enough attention to how closely tied, you know, big tech and some of these, entertainment ventures are with government. Like, it's crazy. Like, when you actually start to look into it, like, many of the biggest businesses on earth, if not like the majority of them, are both propagandizing us and receiving our taxpayer money and are negotiating special treatment with the government based off of their outsized power. They're fucking terrible. And this is why I hate the libertarians that give me it's a private business, bro, line. You know, when it comes to Disney, when it comes to Twitter, when it comes to Facebook, when it comes to Google, it's like, none of these companies are fucking private businesses, man. Like, they're not. Like, they may be owned privately somewhat, you know, but if you are profiteering off of your relationship to the government, I don't look at you as a private business, personally. And I think that's a way that we can actually reach across the aisle to the left and say, like, look, you're not going to get what you want. I still want there to be private property rights. I still believe that capitalism is the greatest thing that's ever happened to humanity, personally. But I can ally with you when it comes to, you know, going after the unholy alliance of big business and big government.
Yeah, when I'm talking with the left, I mean, I do notice, and like, I'm not going to say that they're libertarians in any sense of it. Like, they're huge statists in a lot of things, but at the same token, a lot of the worst things that exists in the government or exists with big business, they identify with the term capitalism. So they have the same gripes as we do about the whole system, and they identify the same issues. They just see the causes being different, and they see the solution as being different.
Yes.
But I just see a radicalization on both sides in like a response to COVID, that the left is getting more radicalized to the left and the right is getting more radicalized to the right. And I just fear when the pendulum swings back to the right, the pendulum of power, you know.
Sure. No, you're right. I mean, it's not without its obvious dangers that come with that. And a good example. I've loved the vast majority of what DeSantis has done, Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida,
right,
over the past two years. But I don't like the fact that he banned protesting outside of government officials' houses, like or out of anybody's house. Like, I think that you should have a right to protest. Like, that's part of the First Amendment. That's part of free speech. I don't understand. I don't think that it will be held up if it's ever challenged in court. But regardless, this is the type of thing where, because he's earned up, enough goodwill from his supporters over the years, they will be more apt to accept these things just because it benefits them right now, because they're out there protesting the end of Roe versus Wade. So DeSantis comes out and says, well, that's illegal. You can't do that in the state of Florida. And the right cheers ignorantly because they don't see how that diminishes their right to protest when, vaccine mandates are rolled out, that type of thing. So I agree with you, though. I'm also concerned about like the religious fundamentalist type of revivalism that I'm seeing. Like, I think that we have gotten too far away from God, and I think that like there's value in people, refinding religion. I'm not trying to, dismiss any of the value of it, but I'm very weary of having, people that believe in, fundamental, like Christian fundamentalist values that then think that they should be implemented through the state. I don't want to go back to that either. So it's like I want the pendulum to stop in the middle. So I'm like, right. I'm going to fight. Yeah. I'm going to fight both sides.
Yeah, totally agree. And just as DeSantis, I've been known as a critic of DeSantis from libertarian grounds, and I agree, with the good things that he did in Florida in terms of protecting people's, bodily autonomy and things like that. But he's anti-BDS he's just in Israel's back pocket, and so there's things like that. Like, I don't know if do you know that he had the IDF come to assist with the condo collapse, and they did like a, yeah. People don't. I
had no idea.
Yeah, he did. And they, like, the IDF, even the bomb squad came and helped search for survivors. And then they participated in like a controlled demolition of the remaining structure. And it's just really weird stuff, like him going to Israel and going to like what do they call that? The wall. Anyways, I could go on about DeSantis, but
yeah, well, I'm weary of him too. I think that it could be simple political pandering in the sense that, there's a tremendous Jewish population in Florida because you have so many retirees from New York that fly down here. It also could be that he has presidential aspirations. And as we all know, if you don't have the support of Israel, you don't get to become the president of the United States.
Yeah.
So it could be that. I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, as a governor, he can't do much that will really piss me off. But it's not impossible. And I think that the bigger concern would be if he becomes president and then we end up finding out that he's, some bloodthirsty warmonger that will do whatever Israel tells him to, in which case we're screwed. So
yeah.
I don't know. I'm hot and cold on him. I like him as a governor. I probably wouldn't like him as a president.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to make sure that I asked you about is that you had someone on your show who had gone to Ukraine.
Yeah.
And I know, like, for some reason, because I listened, I think it was your first episode with Judge Napoleono, and you had mentioned that you got some flack for talking with him, which I think is complete bullshit that someone would do that. Because, just because you have someone on your show doesn't mean you agree with everything that they're saying. And I think it's incredibly fucking important to have someone like that and, like, get at least their perspective. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. People were really bothered by the fact that at the end I said I commended him for his courage. I meant that. Like, that dude went on it. Assuming he's not like some CIA operative, he went on his own dime to go over there and fight in what he believes is a war for the liberation of oppressed people or people that are being invaded. I disagree with his assessment. I said that a few times during the show. I don't think that this is as simple as he's making it sound. But at the same time, like, I have to kind of seed the ground of like, he was just there, assuming he's telling me the truth. He was just there witnessing it with his own eyes. Like, I have to take his input seriously and try and not come from such a place of like I know better than anybody as to what's exactly is happening. And
right. Yeah.
I don't. And that's why I like having people on of all different walks of life. I mean, this guy considered himself a libertarian. He considered it a war for liberation. That's his perspective, and if that's his honest, sincere belief, then I can't do anything else but say, kudos to you for having the balls to go over there and fight a fucking nuclear power. I sure as shit wouldn't do it. But that's at the same time, like, I understand why people were a little bit bothered by his positions. Like, I think
right.
that
yeah, it would be too.
Yeah, and I was bothered by it too, to be honest. So like, I just didn't like scream in his face about it on the show. So I think some people just want, they want fireworks, they want pushback, they want, but at the same time, like, I don't think that they know how they would handle those type of conversations. Like, it's a one-on-one conversation. It's a lot harder to be a dick when you're actually talking to somebody. It's easier in the chat to just be like, fuck this guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think about it too, because like, I've been known, and I know you had Scott on the show to talk about the Uyghur genocide allegations. I know that Scott was talking about it, and I listened to an episode where you had discussed it with him. And I think that, like, especially when it comes to foreign policy, you have to be really careful about which narratives that you propagate.
Yes.
Because I guess I'll use that as an example. If I had someone who claimed to be a Uyghur from Xinjiang come on my show and talk about the concentration camps that they saw there, I guess I wouldn't be opposed to having that person on, but I wouldn't be putting them on saying, now listen, audience, this is the God's honest truth. This is what's happening for sure, definitely, or having a defector from North Korea on talking about rivers of blood. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly right. It's like, I trust my audience is capable of trying to take in new information and decipher the truth for themselves. Like, I think libertarians have an issue with this too, even though we're probably the most free thinking people, because we don't have a media that like just feeds us whatever we want. So we're constantly listening to left leaning media or right leaning media and just having to decipher constantly. Like, that's what we have to do. And I think that's why I love libertarians so much, is because they're one of the few people that are capable of doing that. And I just continue to have that belief when it comes to who I'm going to have on my show. Like, I'll have on socialists too. I'll have on left-leaning people. Like, I don't care. It certainly doesn't mean that I think that socialism is the way. Like, I think that socialism is fucking evil. So like, and if I have to say that on every show, I just feel like they probably aren't regular listeners. It's like, right, yeah. Like, if you haven't got a feel for what I'm about at this point, like, I don't know what you're doing. Just listen to another couple episodes. You'll see that I probably align with you on 99% of things, but you just gotta, like, I'm not always going to be a dick to people. I had Adam Kokesh on my show, and he called me an idiot and an asshole and all sorts of stuff. And I just sat there and took it because I don't really give a fuck. Like, the show, when I'm hosting an interview in particular, I try to make the show not so much about me. Like, I really want it to be about developing ideas, challenging ideas, but in a respectful fashion, like seeing if there's a meeting of the minds that's able to be had. Also, if it's ad hominem attacks, like, that usually means that you're over the target in terms of like getting to the heart of the issue, like what might actually be bothering someone. So when he started to lash out at me, I was like, okay, well, then I'm getting close. I don't need to react reflexively and just be like, well, fuck you, dude, you get off my show. Like, I'm just going to sit with it, and I'm going to allow him to like dig into those emotions and see if I can get him to actually get to the core of what he's upset about. Because at the end of the day, like, especially when I had him on, my biggest goal was to find out what's really happening here. Because I don't think like he has this persecution complex where he thinks everyone's out to get him, and I personally don't believe that to be true, because I know a lot of the people that he thinks are out to get him, and I know that they're not. So I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna work through this, and at the end of the day, like, I care about this movement, and I care about the ideas of liberty more than I do about any of our individual egos. And I think that like that's hopefully how we can make progress. And sometimes I may upset my audience with doing that. Yeah. In which case, fuck them.
Yeah, and I think it's like, you don't want to get into a position where you can't be your authentic self with your audience. I mean, and right. in a lot of ways, I started this show as being like some kind of a public diary or something. I mean, and it's cool to have that record of your life, you know, and to look back and see who you were at that time. And because I think the audience grows with you, and the audience, I mean, you know how it is with Dave. Like, I mean, been listening to Dave and Tom for years, man. It feel like there's thousands or hundreds at least of hours of you having an intimate relationship with this other person that doesn't know you exist per se. It's kind of weird thing. Yeah.
It's totally wild, man. I mean, Joe Rogan is the first podcast I ever fell in love with back in 2010. Then I started listening to Bill Simmons, and then Duncan Trussell. And then I eventually found Dave Smith when he was on Rogan the first time in like 2015, 16, whenever it was. And then I became a part of the Problem listener all the way back then. So I've been listening to him for like 6 years. I don't think I've ever missed an episode. I mean, I pretty much loved the guy before I ever even met him.
Yeah, it's weird. But cool.
And now we're actually friends, and that's even weirder. So it's and I think I have a similar dynamic that's happening with my show. Is, you know, I've been doing it for two years now. I'm doing, you know, upwards of 10,000 listeners per episode, and it's like, yeah, some of these people are going to create a bond with me, and they're going to feel betrayed sometimes because I don't react exactly how they expect that I will, and things like that. You know, it's unusual, but I feel like it's just part of the territory, man. Like you're never going to make everybody happy, and I feel extraordinarily blessed to have so many people that are interested in my ideas, that are along with me for this ride. And ultimately, like, I need them. Like, I need them in this fight, like, not for my own show. Like, I'm financially set already. Like, this is about the cause, and I need as many people riding with me as possible, because we are outnumbered when it comes to like political power right now.
Well, let's roll that into the Reno reset situation, because this is going to air 7 days before Reno, before the national convention. So I know that you've been doing some speaking events, and are you good for like 5-10 more minutes? I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Yeah. So I know that you've been going speaking at LP event, or Mises Caucus events. I should be clear. You know, I don't get too involved with that kind of thing. Like, I'm friendly with the Mises Caucus, but like I tell them, you know, I know where my role is in this movement. It's with my show and with the Institute and things like that. But what have you been doing, I guess, first of all? And then just for my own curiosity, are you a member? What's going on with that?
Yeah, I'm a member of the Mises Caucus. I'm also, you know, LP, and it hasn't been exclusively talks that I've given to the Mises Caucus. I spoke in person at the LP Ohio state convention. Okay. So that, I mean, it wasn't a ton of people, but it was cool to go into, I guess, not I wouldn't say enemy waters, but maybe not not the friendliest of waters, where like normally I go into these events and I'm either like I'm opening for Dave or you know, some other huge Mises figure, and the audience is already, they know me, they love me, and like it's all gravy. So to go into a conversation with people that don't know me at all, I kind of like that. I like to see if I can win them over. So I've only given a handful of in-person talks so far. I'll be doing, the biggest one was in Texas, and that was the Mises Caucus event, but it was right across the street from the LP Texas event. And there was like 150 or 200 people in the auditorium. And then there was 100 people in the overflow. So it was like 250, 300 people that were listening to me. That was my first ever live speech, man. First ever in my life. Yeah. I had that many people sitting there. It was wild. And I was opening for fucking Eric July, Scott Horton, and Dave Smith. Like, what? Yeah. You know, just unbelievable. But I had a great time with it. The crowd seemed to really enjoy it. And I can't even like put into words how honored I am to be in this position. Like I feel as if I'm on the path I'm supposed to be on. My life feels like it's come full circle. Like I'm really pursuing what I'm passionate about, and I'm finding people that feel similarly, and it's just a beautiful thing. So I'm not going to stop. You know, that's really my perspective on it. So I will be a delegate for the state of Florida at Reno, and I hope to get Angela McArdle in there as chair. And then after that, I will be giving 2 1-hour presentations at PorcFest in New Hampshire. Then I'll be presenting in, I think it's Michigan, a month later. And then I'll be doing Freedom Fest, where I'll also be a presenter again. So it's crazy, man. My life is like a dream or something. I don't know. It's wild.
Yeah, well,
I think like we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I'll see you at Freedom Fest actually, because the Institute is going out there.
Awesome.
So it should be me and Scott and Keith and Connor and Kyle, I think, are all the guys going. So yeah, it'll be pretty. Squad. Yeah, it'll be pretty fucking fun, dude. Yeah. Well, why don't you tell everybody where they can find your work and how they can support you?
Yeah. If you want to support my work, you can go to libertylockdown.locals.com, become a supporting member there. I do once a month or once every 2 months AMAs where I actually get the supporters are able to come on stream with me, ask me investment questions, ask me anything under the sun, like whatever they've been wanting to ask me, and they can either come on screen visually or just audio and ask, or even just type me questions, whatever. So that's kind of a cool experience. We're getting I don't know if we got 100 yet, but quite a few supporters over there already. And I only started a few months ago, so that's really nice. And then the show itself, if you want to listen, just search Liberty Lockdown in your podcatcher. You should find it. And on YouTube, it's Liberty Lockdown. And then on basically search any social media for Liberty Lockdown, you'll find me, except for Twitter, which is at Liberty Lock Pod. About to hit 41,000 followers, so that's crazy too. And I don't know, man. Life's good. I just pray to God that the economy doesn't implode and society doesn't implode along with it. But if it does, we will find a way through. I have faith.
Yeah. I was gonna say something else. Oh yeah, so when you go on iTunes and you click on my show, you're one of the first recommended ones. So like, hey. I think there's some overlap there. I don't know if it goes the other way, but so there's that.
I'll check that out. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, well,
yeah, I looked at that a couple days ago, and I had Tom Woods and Part of the Problem and Pete Quinones were like the recommendeds that lead to me and vice versa. And I was like, wow, this is crazy, dude. Like I'm up there with the giants, because those were all the guys I listened to back in the day, and I still do. So it's just wild.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love it.
Yeah, well, it's really great to meet you, man, and then to have you come on the show, and looking forward to seeing you at Freedom Fest there, man.
Hell yeah, brother. And hopefully Reno goes off without a hitch, and hopefully we can do something really special over the next couple of years. But thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no problem.